Welcome to Equipping Leaders, a podcast where I share and discuss resources, tools, and information to equip leaders to build creative, cohesive teams through culture and leader development. Welcome to Season 2 of the Equipping Leaders podcast. In Season 1, I did mostly solo casts because I wanted to share some ideas and tools. For Season 2, I will be interviewing leaders in the coaching and people development space so you can hear from different types of coaches, gain more tools for your own leadership toolkit, and hear how people are positively impacting their workplaces, which can lead you to ideas about impacting your workplace as well. For each episode, there is a detailed show notes page on my website, natashacheyenne.com, including insights from the session, timestamps, links to further resources, and ways to connect with the speaker. In today's episode, I am sharing a conversation that I had with executive coach and author Kate Eckman on the Full Spirit Workout, external influences, and reframing. As Kate talks about in this episode, it is really valuable to have a plan for how we are exercising our soft skill muscles, just like it is important to have a plan for how we move our physical bodies. Thank you so much for being here with me today, Kate. So I'm going to start by asking you to introduce yourself and tell us your style of coaching.
Okay, well, my name is Kate Eckman, and thank you again for having me. It's my joy to be here. And I don't know if you'll let your listeners know, but we met at Columbia. We didn't actually meet there. We met in our practicum because we were in two groups to start off the program. But I love that we share that love of coaching and personal development and also love of learning, right? We're the people that can't stop going to school and getting degrees and certifications. And I think we just connected deeply in that aspect. And besides the fact that you're just such a cool human and just a loving force, I have to share with your listeners, I know you asked me a question, but I have to tell them, you know, what I just love and adored about you and still do is that you're so brilliant, and you know that you are, but it's not in that like gross, icky way. It's more in a like, hey, or let me help you, or, you know, hey, Natasha, I have a question. And just you're wanting to help people and wanting to keep growing and learning and exploring. And I admire that about you. And for people who are just discovering you, I can't recommend you and your services enough, because it's just that constant quest for knowledge. So I had to take a moment and say that, because that actually plays into my coaching style, because my coaching style does involve really deep exploration and constantly bettering ourselves through knowledge and through education and through asking the questions to take us to another level. And my approach really is a mind, body, spirit approach. I know they're all connected, and sometimes the mind can be limiting. You can only go so far. So you do need to bring it down into the heart and the spirit. And then our body is just the vessel that carries us through life. And so while they're all connected, I think we don't necessarily spend enough time going within. And I believe my coaching philosophy is when we take care of our inner world, our outer world takes care of itself. Or if you're experiencing an outer setback or something, go from the outside in and then the inside out. So I really believe it in that, and going deep with people. Coaching with me is, I think, very rewarding and fulfilling according to my clients, but we're going to get in there. I'm not interested in the surface level. I don't think any change happens there. I think it's really important to go underneath the hood of the car and really discover who we are underneath our labels and our limitations and that perfect person that we try to present to the world. When we really get in there in the messy, vulnerable, flawed but beautiful person that we kind of hide from the world at times, or because that person's just trying to keep it all together behind the scenes, right? So I think it's getting in touch with that person too, and then that inner journey leads to outer success.
Yes, and I can say that I think that one of the things too that really drew us to each other in that practicum was I knew that you were someone who, in our first few conversations, we did go very deep on the different topics. And whether we were doing like a coaching session or not, there was just this ability to be very vulnerable in that way with you, where it was not this fear of she's going to think I'm too nerdy, or she's got, it was no judgment.
But besides your kindness and your intelligence and just the energy that you would show up with, on Zoom, we were doing Zoom before Zoom was the huge thing pre-COVID, which was cool because we were connecting with colleagues all over the world and which it was really awesome. And that's what I love about Columbia. It's a very international experience, and that's education in itself, right? Learning and being surrounded by people who are different from us. So I love that. But I think too, and with my coaching style and why I connected with you is because I felt so seen by you. And I think there's this, I don't know what I want to label it as, an epidemic or whatever, but I think people that love us or even claim to love us, they oftentimes don't even really see us or hear us or acknowledge us. And I think that's your goal. But then what separates you from other people? And I think it's that ability to really see the person that's in front of you, whether it's a friend or a client or a colleague or the checkout person at Trader Joe's. And just that is such a huge part of coaching and creating that space where people for once don't feel judged or just allow themselves to be vulnerable and go to that place that they don't really show themselves. I had a client recently at the end of our call, he almost looked bewildered, and it was our first session together, and I think, oh gosh, and we did go deep, and he had shared with me in the conversation how close he is with his wife. I said, she sounds awesome. I'd love to meet her one day. And at the end I said, what's coming up for you? What insight do you have from our session? And he just said, I've never talked about any of that with anyone ever, even my wife, and I tell her everything. And it was all professional. We weren't talking about personal business. But what that said to me is that he felt safe in that environment. And as you know, as a coach, our job is to ask the questions that elicit responses or make the client think about things they've never really thought about. They don't have that immediate answer. They're not the politician with that surface level, here's my soundbite. They have to think on it.
And I think that in coaching, that skill of listening, which a lot of people think, oh, I know how to listen. I listen all the time. But statistically, actually only about 2% of the population knows how to listen appropriately, which when we think about it, we're like, that actually makes sense. A lot of people listen to respond. And then even the people who are listening to understand, they still aren't taking that next step into listening for meaning and listening with the potential to be influenced. So in these different levels of listening, when you can really demonstrate that for other people, it also creates that safe space where people feel safe, they feel welcomed. And then when they tell you things, they feel like it's actually landing somewhere and they're not just speaking out into the universe.
I love that. And I love that statistic. See, I feel like the nerd too. I'm like, I love that 2% statistic. But, I think too, especially doing a lot of press for the book and being on certain things. And there was one woman the other day, and I know this woman, and I knew she was going to ask me this. It was, can you send me the questions? What do I ask? All the things. And I just said, with love and with kindness, you just need to show up and listen. Show up and listen so we can have an organic, authentic conversation. This is a conversation. And I think that's the missing component, whether it's a personal or professional conversation, is everyone's coming with this agenda or what's our intention? Because I think too, and listen, quite frankly, I'm like, even right now, I'm tired. And so I show up and I want to have a great interview and I want to give you a great podcast and be a great guest. And so when I am in that place and thinking I'm tired or feeling tired, I show up with my rule of thumb is I'm going to show up, bring my energy, and be present and just fully engaged with the person in front of me, in this case you, and it's so lovely to be here, and just really be in the moment. And when you're in the present moment, everything else takes care of itself. And even right now, I'm babbling a little or say whatever, but it's just we're having a natural, real conversation. We're not blow up dolls or puppets.
Yes. And I've seen people, when they kind of first start coaching and it's this new concept, they fall into this mindset of, I need you to ask me what to ask and when to ask it. And then they almost like need this outline to kind of get to the end. When, yeah, in reality, like any conversation, if I'm, when we're just talking socially, I don't have a script for that. And that's what makes those connections like so deep and so much more authentic. And then also helps you connect with that person a lot better, because I'm not like, hello, Kate, how are you? You're like, I'm fine.
Oh
Okay, hold on. Next question.
Oh gosh, please never do that.
Because then it's so disconnected. But you're right, that showing up and just where is this going to go and being curious about that and not having that kind of fixed mindset of, no, it's got to be 30 minutes long and it's got to go this way and these questions have to be answered. But maybe something even better is going to come out of it.
Right, because you might even have this whole plan, and yet do you want to be prepared? Absolutely. And know about the person that's coming on or know about your client? 100% absolutely. I take a ton of notes when I work with clients, but you can have this whole agenda and have your set of questions, and the person, I will never forget this moment, is when I was a red carpet reporter in Hollywood and interviewing celebrities at their movie premieres, things like that. And Tommy Lee Jones, the actor, was being interviewed by this journalist next to me, and she said something like, oh, how you doing tonight? And he said, not well. My grandmother just died. And she said, oh, that's great. That's great. So what was it like working with Tom Cruise? And I thought he was gonna punch her in the face. He shot me this look like, you've got to be kidding me. And I was like, oh boy. And he left the red carpet and skipped the rest of press. And I was so embarrassed for this woman, but I'll never forget that. And I was young, but I will never forget that, because I think she's even a journalist, and she's not even listening to him. And I think we oftentimes find ourselves in those situations. And I think why coaching is so helpful is not because as coaches, we have these magical spells that we put on people to make all their goals happen and all their dreams come true. But it is so powerful when you can show up in a space and not be judged, and where it's all about you for an hour or however long, and that you are really being heard. And when you're heard, that's when the transformation comes, because you can actually let it release from your body. Think about what you're saying. It is so rare that happens, even with your spouse or even with your best friend, because everyone's kind of fighting for attention, or like, I need to discuss this topic with you. And it's just this ping pong match instead of a deep listening. And that is one of the most important things as a coach. And I think life would be so much easier if we all just showed up and were present and truly took the time to listen to one another. Obviously, I'm very passionate about this. And why are you passionate about it? Because you've experienced the opposite. I've experienced multiple times not being seen, not being heard, not being acknowledged, even by society, based on some of the choices that I make. An unmarried, childless woman, you're labeled other if you don't want to go the path that most people go. That's expected of you as a woman. So it's painful, right? When people don't see us. And I wrote about that in my book that you read. And so I think, again, I don't want to have too big of a love fest with you, but when you do feel seen by someone, I don't even care what your credentials are. Who you are is why I'm hiring you as a coach. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I think there's also that piece of when we know someone is listening, as we're kind of moving through a session or a conversation or whatever, when they suggest something, we're more likely to consider it. I know that I had been in this coaching session and I had not ever considered that I felt guilty about the thing we were talking about. But then all of a sudden she just kind of stopped and she goes, I'm just going to ask you a question. Do you think there's any guilt there? And I thought about it for a second, but then I love how she then followed up with, she said, don't go looking for it, because you're going to manifest it and find it and put it on something that it doesn't necessarily belong to. Before our conversation, had she not demonstrated such excellent listening in the session, somebody else could have said that and I would have been like, you're crazy. Like, no way. So I think that, yeah, when you know you're being heard and somebody's really listening well, we're more open to a lot of other things too, in the sense of exploring these other things.
Yeah, listening builds trust. When you're listening to me, I trust you. I trust that I feel safe in your presence, and it's this almost unspoken agreement of you feel good, or you're going to do right by me. You care about my well-being. Listening is really putting somebody's well-being front and center. And you're right. And then you are open to that. And then you almost look for it because you've taken a moment to build trust, and trust gets built really fast because, again, it is so foreign for someone to deeply listen to us without projecting, without judgment, without giving us advice. I think that's another, I'm all about epidemics today. That's the other thing, right? Is that something comes up, you get the upsetting email, you're upset about something, and what's everyone want to do? Everyone wants to give you advice, solve your problem. And the other day, I said to this woman, I said, I don't need advice. I don't need a solution. I just need to be heard. I just need to tell somebody this because it's upsetting. And all I needed in that moment was for the person to listen and just say, wow, Kate, that sounds really frustrating. I can see why you're upset. And maybe, what do you need or something like that. But I didn't get that. I got like, you just need to X, Y, and Z. And that just makes you even more upset, right?
Well, and when people make suggestions, it's almost this kind of like implication that you didn't think of that really basic thing yourself. Like when a problem arises, we know what to do. And sometimes we just get a little bit off path because there's just too many things coming at us. And so having somebody listen to us, it helps remind us of the direction that we need to go. But when people try to impose their solutions, if you will, on us, we already know those things. You're not telling us something that's like mind blowing. When people are like, oh, well, just don't worry about it. And you're like, I never thought of that. I just won't worry. It's interesting that sometimes we have to have those interactions where it's like, let me tell you what I need because you're not listening for what I might need.
Or just tuning in energetically. If you call me upset, I want to know why you're upset or, hey, what's going on? Because sometimes we just need to release it. And then even as you say it and you'll process in live time, and then you're like, you know what? Actually, it's not that big of a deal. Thank you so much for listening. I think I just needed to tell someone. Now that I say it out loud, oh, I know what I need to do. Thank you so much for listening. Bye. Glad I could help, but you did help because you shut your mouth.
You've already started to talk about your amazing book, The Full Spirit Workout. So what I'd like to ask you is, what is the Full Spirit Workout and what inspired it?
Yeah, so the Full Spirit Workout is a play on the full body workout that you often hear advertised at the gym, but it's also about bringing your full spirit, your authentic truth and power, your presence, your passion, to everything you do and to everyone you meet. It's showing up like you mean it and you've got something to say and you're excited about life and really tuning into that inner wisdom and developing the inner muscles, the mental, emotional, spiritual muscles that can weather any storm. We're not talking about performance confidence here where you can fake it till you make it and show up and pretend. This is really about building the inner musculature that is unshakable and unbreakable. It's full body, that resiliency and strength that comes from within that nobody can ever take from you, that we all have access to. It's just, we don't believe it. We've forgotten. We never realized or knew in the first place. So it's that gentle reminder. And spiritual fitness is really about having the courage to show up as who you really are, not just that person that you present to the world that's put together, but the messy behind the scenes, flawed, gorgeous soul that's just trying to keep it all together. He or she is awesome too. It's the courage to be all of that, who you are and where you are in your body, in the world, and where you are in your journey. Maybe you're just starting out on your journey and that's great. That's juicy. That's a great place to be. And this work is so important to me because I think a lot of people have fallen asleep to the truth of who they are. And that's why we experience so much self-doubt and the imposter syndrome, because we've just forgotten and we've fallen asleep to the truth of who we are. And I feel like it's my duty and mission and purpose to remind everyone gently and lovingly, sometimes forcefully, like, you are talented. You have gifts. Let's go. The world needs you. And if you don't believe it and you don't feel like using your gifts, well, then do it for somebody else. Do it for somebody who isn't in your position of privilege or power. Do it for someone who doesn't have a voice. Do it for your family, your colleague, an organization or cause bigger than you. So it's taking that time to go within. Unlike physical exercise, this is more about stillness and getting steady on the inside rather than doing this or doing that and forcing and trying to control something just so we can feel worthy or people can like us.
I love also that you said, even if you're at the beginning of your journey, because one of the things I really loved as I was reading through the book, which I've actually already read through it twice.
That is so you, and I love it. Oh my gosh.
But I was also thinking, well, first I would have loved to have had this book when I was a teenager, but also when I think about it, I'm like, this book will be impactful always, right? So like at each stage, I'll definitely, it'll be on my reread list forever, because also like at each stage, like you said, you need those reminders. You just need to remember how to take a pause and find that courage to move forward and take the next right step. But I also really appreciated how the different exercises that were in it were not only like really robust and fun, but they were all backed by research. They were all like so intentional, actually backed by like solid scientific research.
Yeah, that was really important to me, to combine, personal real life experience. And, I know where you've been because I've been there, but also research. And you think of some colleagues that we know. I have our colleague, Derek, he is all about data. He needs science and data, or he's like, you're losing him, and some people like me, I'm the empathizer. I feel with the heart. I need to feel it. Other people need to experience it. Other people, they want to plan it out in a certain way. But I think it's important because I wanted something that really works, because we've reached a place in our world and in our society where we're almost desperate for new ways of being, because what's happening now isn't working. And we're seeing that play out all around us, and giving people those practical tools. And I'm passionate about research. I mean, I've been a journalist my whole life. I am like really into academics because I have that thirst for knowledge, or I see my current knowledge will only get me so far. And I think I can get further. We all can. And so it is taking the time to come up with those keys for our own well-being. And more importantly than the research is the practice, right? You can have all the knowledge in the world, but if you aren't moving it from your head down to your heart, grounding it in your body, and moving from your heart down to your hands and implementing it, it doesn't work. You can't just show up at the gym and your cute outfit and say, okay, I'm fit now. I got my hot pink outfit on. I'm ready to go. You have to actually sweat and put in the work, and no personal trainer in the world is going to do your push-ups and sit-ups and pull-ups for you. That's on you. And that's why I laid it out for you. It's directional, not linear, and you can move around with it. And some days you're like, I don't have it. It's like, then read the affirmation. Or other days you might be like, I can work out. I can do high intensity today and do 2 journal exercises and do 2 meditations. So I really wanted to make it fun and interactive, and you use the perfect word, which is intentional, and really being intentional about where you want to go. And I think there's this misconception here too, especially because there are meditations in the book. And what do you hear from people? I don't meditate. I don't know how to meditate. I don't have time to meditate. And what I say to that is, well, I don't have time to be angry. I don't have time to be sick. I don't have time to be stressed out, overwhelmed, exhausted, be so pissed that I'm like saying mean things to people because I'm not present in my body, and I'm, not caring for myself. So I think it's just getting really real with ourselves about what's happening within us at our core, and then just deciding, who do I want to be and what kind of life do I really want to have, and believing that you deserve an exceptional life.
And I love what you said about that meditation piece too, because I often hear that, like, I don't have time for that. And you don't have to meditate for an hour. In fact, I meditate every day, and I can't meditate for an hour. My monkey mind just takes over and I cannot do it. But what I will do is, at least for 5 minutes, I'll plan it for 20, and I'm going to work on it as much as I can. But like our physical muscles, that is a muscle that when you teach your mind to stop with the chatter and to knock it off, which it takes so much work. I'll be honest, when I first started meditating, I think maybe 30 seconds. Like 30 seconds is all I could do.
Great, because you did it.
And that was the other thing that I appreciated, was this like buildup of these spiritual muscles, this internal piece where it is just like a physical workout, right? I can't just walk in the gym and deadlift 600 pounds. I mean, my spine would shoot out of my back if I tried.
Oh gosh.
But if I work on it, maybe eventually, I would be able to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then even you're telling me about lifting that heavy weight, and I think, gosh, why do you want to do that? So then that goes to another coaching tool, which is getting our clients really clear on their why. Why is this important to you? Why do you want to deadlift 600 pounds? What would that mean for you, your body, your life? Why do you want to meditate and do journaling exercises? Why is this important to you? And for me, it was just, I was answering a wake-up call, and my life depended on coming up with a better way of living and coming up with really practical, powerful tools and exercises that I could use to get me in a great place and put your well-being first. So I think too, asking ourselves why, and even if you have a moment like, oh, this sounds great, or I'd like to try this, ask yourself, maybe in that case, not like why, but maybe why wouldn't I want to take the time for myself and schedule that meditation or journaling time, or my favorite, I call it my sit and stare time, and just sit and stare out the window or at the wall and process and reflect and check in with myself. How are you doing? What's working? What isn't? What do you need? You know, where especially as women, we're asking everybody else what they need and putting everyone else's needs there. But what do you need? Because if I've learned anything this past year, is that our well-being is no longer this cute, fun thing we can get to someday or post about on Instagram. This is really serious. And for me, I'm not willing to go to a dark place and not be well for myself or others because I'm not willing to care for myself. So I think really, why wouldn't you at least try to work on your mental and emotional muscles? And once you start doing it, just like physical exercise, you start to see the benefits, and then you get that runner's high. You get the internal runner's high. You want to keep doing it because you feel great. And you're like, I didn't even have to try. This person called me. I didn't even have to do anything. I got this job offer. You'll just become the person that naturally attracts all of your desires.
And I appreciate too that you brought in that social media aspect, right? Because on social media, of course, we all know we get the best highlight reel. But I was watching this video the other day, and they were talking about how social media is about to peak to this place where nobody wants to see perfection anymore because we all know it's BS. And so that's another reason why I think this book is so well timed, because like right as people are being like, oh, all these things don't matter. We can care about how we look because that's can be part of our self-care, and that's all great. But at the same time, like trying to so hard to portray this perfect picture that you end up sacrificing so much of who you are internally and not doing the care that you needed, I think is another important thing that people don't really consider. And I think this book is also a really good guide almost for people who are struggling with that and then trying to move through that.
Thank you. And I certainly learned that the hard way. And I think when we are obsessed with the externals, whether it is what you look like, how much money you make, your job titles, your house, your car, all those shiny objects that we've been told are the keys to our well-being. You need all of that to be good enough and feel worthy and loved and valuable. And it's just a lie. And you can unsubscribe from that lie anytime. I recommend doing it right now. So people are like, okay, I'll try to do that. But then what? It's like, well, then you create a new file. It's like a document on your computer. You delete the toxic virus into the trash and then delete the trash. And then you co-create a whole new thought system that's based on the truth, that's based on compliments you hear and based on your strengths and values and priorities, as opposed to all the crap and nonsense. And I certainly have been a product of that culture, being a, on-camera person as a TV presenter and model, and that paying my bills was dependent on looking a certain way and having people approve of or hire me based on the externals. And gross, and just what that does to you. But that's not just me, or you don't have to be. There's plenty of people who work as accountants or lawyers off camera who also are in that space of it has to be all about the externals. And I think when we can go within, release and let go of trying to impress people or what other people think, and really cultivate those inner characteristics and leverage our strengths. And for me, working on this book and having a passion project, this, you're always working on a passion project. When you're so immersed on something so much bigger than you that's going to help other people, all that other stuff just kind of goes away. It's like, I don't have time to worry about how big my thighs are. I'm like working on suicide prevention awareness, trying to keep people alive and give people hope and give those affected by suicide peace and some freedom in their lives to keep going. So I recommend everyone get something that they're really passionate about. And if you don't know, and you think right now the way you're living is as good as it gets, I would challenge yourself, or hire a coach or a therapist or accountability friend to really have someone help you discover who you really are, not who you present to the world, but who you really are when the cameras are off and the hair and makeup is gone and all the fancy things, and you're just home alone in your pajamas, which we've all done a lot this past year, at least I have. It's kind of like you see like who you really are and what you really want. And it's like, wow, I don't even want to live in this city. Wow, I don't even want to be married to this person. We're not even in love anymore. This has been about convenience. Maybe I should explore some other options. I think at least allowing yourself to start percolating on some other experiences or opportunities for yourself. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I think everybody should have a coach. I think everybody should have a coach, and everybody should have a therapist.
Yes.
Because we all just need it. But I think especially women, especially in society where our bodies and our lives are not our bodies and our lives, really they're just performance art for everybody else's evaluation. And so I think that when you can really start talking to a coach, and a coach can help you move through that and figure out which of those things are important and which ones are not, and which ones society has put on you and which one's family, all the things that are kind of put on us where we're like, oh, I believe that. I know that to be true. And you're like, well, but who told you that? So like being able to pull those pieces apart. And I think it's kind of like when you clean out a closet, right? You pull everything out of the closet and you're like, this is a mess. And I actually wish I hadn't even started this. But then as you put it all back together and get things organized, it all makes sense and it all works. I think that's such an important part, especially when you first start coaching, when you go in, you want to lean in and accept that, especially those first several sessions are going to be intense because there's just a lot of movement in your mind and in your heart. But once you get to the other side of that, and you have that coach there to help support along the way too, but then when you get to the other side of that, like you're becoming more and more of who you actually are.
I love that. And I think again, because it is just the space and you feel cared for and you feel heard. And I think when I've had breakthroughs with coaching or even a therapy session just came to mind for me and it was after I lost my friend and, just having a hard time. And I remember leaving this therapy session and calling my mom or someone and saying, oh my gosh, I just had the most amazing therapy session. And she says, why? Why was it so great? And what did she say? And I had to think about it. And I'm like, I don't think she really said anything. She just let me talk for 45 minutes and it was amazing because I didn't feel judged and I felt cared for. And just, you can tell by the way the person looks at you and that's what people will say to me is like, I can tell you're listening to me and you're just so loving. And also offering that to yourself. I think we often aren't so loving to ourselves. We're not listening to ourselves. We get so angry when other people betray us, but we betray ourselves all the time. Whether it's, you can't eat that, you have diabetes and you choose to eat it anyway. You can't tell that person off. It'll ruin the friendship forever. You gotta go meditate or take a bath or go take a walk and calm down. You're in anger instead of like in your center and grounded. So I believe in coaching so much. I believe in personal development so much because we are our greatest asset and tool and vessel. And this is what you got. And you either have an excuse or you have the willingness to show up and put in some work and live the life that you keep saying you want to live, or no, this isn't as good as it gets, quite frankly. And like I said earlier, if you can't do it for yourself, do it for a cause. Go volunteer or think about how you can help or identify your strength and then say, how can I use that strength to help somebody besides myself?
I love all of that.
I'm saying a lot, I know. Yeah. I'm clearly passionate and I just go on and on because I'm passionate about it. And I see what's going on in the world, right? Mm-hmm. And it's sad. And I see a lot of the pretending and the struggle to keep it all together. And I recognize it clearly because I've been there. And I don't pretend that I haven't. And I don't pretend that I don't have bad days or anything. I do. We all are going to fall off the path, right, Natasha? For me, it's about how quickly we can bring ourselves back to center, get back to the path and keep going. And so much of it is, I don't sit here like I'm the most talented this or I'm like, I'm one of the most disciplined people I know. I'm a person who's willing to show up and be horrible at first and then keep getting better. I dare to suck, as I say, just show up. That's me in dance class. Here I am, and I'm willing to do it. And I think sometimes we don't do things because of fear or judgment, and not even from others, but the judgment that we place so harshly on ourselves.
And I think there's also, when we look at all these other things that we could do or that we could be, it really is this lack of understanding of ourselves, this lack of our understanding of how we need to do our self-development that leads to this lack of confidence in new things. Whenever I would get summoned somewhere, like to the boss's office or the principal's office, I would always think like, probably going to get an award of some kind. Just because, not because I thought I was so great, but it didn't matter what they said. I know that I am smart enough. I know that I know how to work through things. I'm going to figure out whatever it is that they throw at me. So if I get fired, if these different things happen, it's going to be fine. I have the discipline. I put in the work to know how to make myself emotionally okay, but then also to gain that traction so that as other things external that I can't control happen, I still have places where I can still keep moving forward. I'm going to figure it out, right? That's who I am and that's what I do.
Yeah, and taking some time off. I tell this story to some people, and I love my dad. I have a great dad. My dad's all about performance and accomplishments and work. And it's, he would always call me and it would be, what are you working on today? What are you doing? In other words, what are you achieving today? And it used to drive me nuts. And I am glad that doing this work and doing the full spirit workout, I got to a place where I would say, I'm not doing anything today, Dad. And he would be like, oh, it sounds nice. I'm like, yeah, it is. But what I was doing is achieving inner peace and achieving rest and relaxation and achieving getting to know myself on a deeper level, because I'm not on a hamster wheel and distracted and taken out by a million things. And so there's this misconception that we have to, if you're not making money and exhausted and stressed out, you aren't achieving. And I think it's time that we all call BS on that and really start to create some new rules and standards for ourselves and live life on our terms rather than what society is telling us is cool or what we should be doing to be worthy and to impress people. What's going to impress people is when you just show up as you are. I think that's been such a learning experience doing press for this book, is that, maybe initially you need to have some credentials to be an expert in your field, or people might think that's cool. Or what's really moving the needle and what people really resonate with, as you know, is your humanity and your willingness to be open and vulnerable and not pretend to have all the answers, and just share where you've got it wrong, where you've struggled, how you overcame the sadness that can be life. It's a part of the human experience. And I think just the more that we're willing to just be real and tell the truth, Natasha, is such a transformational tool. And it's uncomfortable. It's scary. It can wear you out and wear you down, but the benefits are so worth it. It's why people go to the gym every day or do the burpees. I hate burpees and I'm not very good at them, but you do them because you want physical fitness, you want health, you want to be fit and toned so that you can move about the world more effectively and efficiently. And the same is true with our inner muscles. And I think the good thing about the inner muscles is, hey, sometimes that means you get to lie down and meditate for 20 minutes and go on a journey and experience within and tune out all the noise. So there's a lot of positives here. It's not going to feel like that grind. It's going to be more of, I've got to look at myself. But how cool is that?
I think that people kind of confuse sometimes like being in denial about something with this like reframing concept. So can you talk to us a little bit about reframing and its benefits?
Well, thank you. Might be my favorite question yet, because and I love that you're in my book and I wrote about you because you gave me a massive breakthrough with the tool known as reframing, which is just, a shift in perception, a shift in our perspective. And when we were doing peer coaching, you were my coach, and I was in my obsessive perfectionist performer mentality. And I said, my obsession with perfectionism is holding me back. And it was that label that kind of had its shackles on me. And I just felt weighed down by the weight of being a perfectionist and all the weight that word even carries. And you said, you're like this because you care. You're this way because you care, and that's a good thing. So I don't see it as perfectionism, but rather a respect for mastery. And those are my three of my favorite words ever said to me, because how cool is that? Respect for mastery. I say that and I relate to that and I think, yes. And that gives me confidence. And that makes me feel like that's a signature strength, someone who has a respect for mastery, rather than you're a perfectionist, there's something wrong with you, it's holding you back, limiting. So same concept in terms of, I just really care and I want it to be good. My friend said, I like that you're a perfectionist. It means you put out a great product, And so that's even a different kind of reframe. But even just walking around the world and saying something like, I have a respect for mastery, feels so much better than I'm a perfectionist and being held down by that. So it's just being willing to come up with a new way of thinking for yourself. And a quick way to get there is to just say, what if? Just say, so for example, let's say your thought is, this is hard. You say, what if this was easy? What if this wasn't hard? What if this was fun? What if this was bringing me closer to my partner? What if this was challenging me in a way that will help me build a skill set to get a promotion? What if this is exactly what I need right now to show up as my fully actualized self? There's possibility and there's excitement and there's energy, as opposed to, oh, this is so hard.
So what inspires you about coaching?
I think what inspires me is just helping people connect more deeply with themselves and helping them bring out their strengths and their gifts and aligning them with their values and priorities. And I love to see, whether it's the look on someone's face or feel or see the whole energy shifting, where they've went from a place of, I'm stressed and I'm stuck and this isn't working, to, oh my gosh, I know exactly what I'm going to do. I'm so excited. And you see that shift and transformation, and it is so inspiring. And I think just being a champion for someone's inner and outer success, being a champion for people being who they authentically need to be, and really just being someone who can show up for others in a meaningful way. So that's fulfillment for both people. And I'm one of those people who, I want to win, but I want everyone to win. I want everyone to do well. And coaching really offers me that, because people are winning.
Where and how can people find you and learn more about your work and your upcoming projects, and of course buy your book?
Yay! It's so fun seeing you holding my book. It literally made my day. Thank you. It looks so great. You can find me at kateeckman.tv, and it's ECKMAN, and more about the book at thefullspiritworkout.com, and Kate Eckman on social media. And of course, I'd love to connect with anyone who's connected with you and interested in your work. I would love to connect with. So please reach out. And it's so important to have a supportive community and just a place where, I can't say it enough, and I feel like I've said it so many times here tonight, a place where you do feel seen and heard and acknowledged. So that's what I'm here to do, and just know that you will get that in my presence. It's my mission.
That's awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It was so fun.
In this episode, Kate and I touched on a lot of topics, and if you want to learn more about the Full Spirit Workout, to include get some great tools and exercises for further self-development, make sure to pick up her book from your local bookstore. To explore these concepts more for your own self-development, I would invite you to journal about a few questions and a quote. The first question is, what tools do you currently use on a consistent basis to work your mental muscles? And second, what is an issue that you are currently struggling with that you could reframe? And what would some possible reframes be? The quote that I have for you is from Kate Eckman herself, who said, "Being okay if it happens and okay if it doesn't is a very powerful place to be." Thank you for listening to this episode of Equipping Leaders. All of the resources mentioned in this episode can be found on my website, natashacheyenne.com, as well as timestamps to help you get right to the resource that you are looking for. On the website, you can also find a weekly leadership journal entry, a resource page with challenges and downloadable content, a place to sign up for my weekly newsletter, and an upcoming leadership platform full of workshops. You can also follow me on Instagram at novel_Natasha and on Twitter and Facebook at Natasha Cheyenne. If you'd like to hear more about a specific topic, please reach out and let me know. Join me next week for another episode.